a lot of people were mad about the piece because, you know, you're emasculating a man and blah, blah, blah. And Nicholas and I are both just petty enough that we were like, all right, next year, let's do a bigger skirt. And so we did, since they were mad about a black man in a skirt, every year from now on, we're gonna do another version of this painting, but with a bigger skirt, so that eventually he's only this big in the piece and then the skirt takes up the majority of it.
We're in West Dallas at the studio of Jeremy Biggers, and you can see him right there on the mural. He's an artist, and we're gonna learn more about his process and what it's like working in the studio that he shares with his wife, Sam. You were born and raised in the Dallas area?
Born and raised in South Dallas near Fair Park, yep.
So what was it like being a young artist growing up in Dallas?
It was cool. I didn't know any better. I didn't know any artists growing up. And so being the only artist that I really knew, like I had a cousin that was an artist, but he was, 18, 19 when I was in like first grade. So it wasn't like we were close. But he was the only, person making art that I knew of. And he was doing like a lot of like party flyers and, just other typical 80s, like graffiti, lowrider magazine type stuff. And so I fell in love with the craft by just watching him. And, again, he's an 18-year-old. He don't want to have anything to do with a 6-year-old cousin. But I was secretly like flipping through his books, like looking at stuff, just being like, yo, I want to do this. This is so amazing. And so that's the first little like hint of art that I ever saw. And so it was cool growing up, being the only artist, because then once I saw what was possible with him, then it like kind of set me on that trajectory of figuring out how to make it work.
When did you make your first painting? Yeah, tell me about that.
Yeah.
Tell me about your first painting.
My first painting. I still have my very first painting. It's actually at the Texas A&M show that's up right now.
Really?
I went to an art high school here in Dallas, and growing up I only used paper and pencil, so it was always just drawing and graphite, because that's what my parents could afford. They didn't know anything about art. And they didn't know anything about art stores. So my mom would just bring me home reams of paper from work, and just had pencils. And so I would just fill up those 500 sheets of paper, just drawing. And so when I got to high school, they would always tell me like, yo, you need to expand what you're doing. It's not just about the graphite, like you need to try other things. And so I got to painting my senior or junior year of high school, and I hated it because I couldn't control the paint the way I was controlling the pencil. And like, I wasn't just an amazing pencil artist, but I could control it. And like, I didn't really enjoy the process because of how long it took with the pencil. And so finally my painting instructor at the time was just like, look, I know you don't like this because you can't control it, but if you can learn to control it, you'll get the images that you're going for a lot faster than you would if it was just graphite and paper. And so I think he saw in me that I was trying to get to that image more so than trying to go through because some people are about their process, some people are about the final product. And I think he saw for me that it was like, all right, you clearly want to see what this is going to look like and exist in the world. So let's get you to that point faster. And so I started painting, like I said, I think it was like junior, senior year of high school. And that first painting that I did, it was right around the 1997 All-Star game. Is that the cat? Babe, is that the cat? Oh, okay. Jesus Christ. I was like, are you making noise over there? Okay, sorry. And so, like making that painting, being like the very first painting was, I was really into sports and basketball at the time, and it was right around the time of the 97, 98 All-Star game. And I was just like, I really love Ernie Barnes. I really love that like elongated,
I love that,
like
those
stretched
album covers.
Yeah, like all the stuff that we grew up watching, Good Times and like all that stuff. So seeing that was extremely influential and stuff that I really enjoyed seeing. And so like any young artist, I was like, I just want to copy that. If I can just do that, then like I'll be in a good spot. And so trying to copy that, I made those works. And so it was just like this elongated Kobe Bryant dunking on Karl Malone, because I hated Karl Malone. I still hate Karl Malone. But yeah, I wanted to basically just, it taught me that everything else up to that point was me finding a photo in a magazine and just copying the photo.
Yeah.
This was like the first, like, too. I think we all did, like, especially any figurative painter, like, or figurative artist. We all started with, fashion magazines and Word Up magazines and hip hop posters and all that stuff. So drawing from those references, that was the first time I had ever done something that was like kind of conceptual, where I didn't have a reference image. It was just me. Like, I know how the body works. I know what a body looks like. And so going from that into like, okay, let me experiment a little bit more. Let me play with a little bit more color. Let me try like to do different things that aren't just like photo 1-to-1 for the reference. And in doing that all throughout high school, it finally got to a point where I was like, I can do those things, but I enjoy, like, it's more cathartic and more relaxing for me to just not have to always be trying to come up conceptually with the thing. So just copying 1-to-1, like, and trying to get my technical skill as sound as possible was something that was more important to me than trying to be the most creative, like, I'm creating stuff out of my mind that no one's ever seen. Yeah. Like, that's cool, but that just didn't bring me joy. And so I was like, I want to be the most technically sound painter from there. So, like I said, that's still to this day is like the goal and the trajectory.
And how did you end up becoming an artist full time?
The journey to becoming an artist full time for me was an unfortunate one, kind of, but I think it was a necessary thing to happen. My mom passed away. I worked at a corporate, as anybody does when you grow up. In my parents worked corporate. Every adult I knew worked corporate, and so I, of course, moved into this is what you do. Like, you can do art as a hobby, but you have to have a job to pay your bills.
Same.
And so I moved into the corporate ladder, and I hated every second of it. Like, the job that I was at was not enjoyable at all, and it was definitely one of those, this is just what you have to do. Like, you don't get to enjoy it.
I did that too. I worked for the state for a while, and I was just miserable. Jesus. So I feel the pain.
Yeah, so it's all bad. And so I was like, all right, well, if that's the case, if I have to have a job, at least this job is not difficult. Like, I hate it, but I know it's not difficult. And because it's not difficult, I worked 3 to midnight or 4 to 1 a.m. every night. And so the people, my higher ups, the people that were above me, they would leave every day at like 6 o'clock. And so I would finish my work, between 4 o'clock and 6 o'clock, or 3 o'clock and 6 o'clock when I got there. And so by the time they left, I would take my lunch when they left. So when I came back from lunch, I basically had 5 uninterrupted hours of me sitting at my desk, because I had to still be at my desk, but I was just at my desk drawing, painting, just making art 6 hours at a time every single night, because I had to be there. So I think as much as I hated that job, it taught me to sit still and be in one place and just make the work. But then my mom passed away, and it kind of really like put things in such a hyper focus of, life is short, tomorrow's not promised. And I think within the next 2 weeks after my mom passed away, like after I, gotten back to work after bereavement leave, it put so much stuff into perspective of like, my mom worked at the same job. Like, she worked in a different department than I did, but she still worked at a similar job. And to see that, they had already replaced her, and it really made me realize, like, bro, these people do not care. Like, they talk all this stuff about, being a family and we're looking out for each other, but when some real stuff goes down, they're not really there for you. They'll replace you.
The bereavement leave was probably like a few days.
Yeah, it was only a few days. And so, like, when I got back, like I said, it only took me a couple of weeks before I was like, you know what, I'm out, because you don't have, tomorrow's not promised. You don't have anything, guaranteed. And I refuse to, waste my life sitting in this corporate office. And so I was like, I owe it to myself to just get out there and at least try it one time. And so I quit my job, and then was like, all right, I'm gonna make this art thing happen full time. And I did that for a few years and fell on my face because I just wasn't ready. I wasn't prepared. On top of just the grieving of losing your parent, like I just wasn't prepared to be an artist full time. And so I got another job, but I was determined once I got that new job, I wasn't gonna fall into the same traps. And fell into the same traps and was stayed at that job probably
real
5 years longer than I needed to.
Can relate.
And then she's my wife now, but at the time she was my girlfriend. I told her how miserable I was at that job, and she was just like, look, you're talented enough that you'll always be able to find a job. You'll always be able to work. You owe it to yourself to get out there and try to make some shit shake. Like, get out there and make it happen. And, you know, if it doesn't work out this time, like, you still can just go get another job. You can never, like, there'll never be a time where you won't be able to go get a job. And so she was like, I'm not going anywhere. If we got to eat ramen noodles every night, like, we're good. And so to have that, like, permission from her, basically, like, and to have her blessing, I was just like, well, if she's good, then yeah, let's get out here and make it happen. And so that was in 2013, I think. And, you know, I haven't had a job since then because it's just been, all right, if we're not going to be hungry, we're not going to be homeless. No matter what I got to do to make that happen, we're going to make it happen. And so, like, growing up in South Dallas in the hood, I always had like a hustler mentality. Like, I didn't grow up on the streets. I don't want to make it seem like I was just like that, but I definitely grew up in the hood and saw that hustler mentality and was like, all right, you got to make it happen. It's not going to come to you. Nobody's going to come save you. You got to do it yourself. And so, yeah, ever since then, it's just been a get out there and make it happen.
Tell me a little bit about what did making it happen look like early on, like around 2013.
Yeah. So making it happen for me was, I know I want to paint the stuff that I want to paint. And I know I like painting the things that I want to paint. And in working at the second corporate job that I had, I was doing a more graphic design approach. So the first job I had was just working at a call center, doing spreadsheets, paperwork, all that stuff. Totally not me. The second job, I was like, all right, well, maybe if I got a job in the arts, like a graphic design job or something that, you know, towards where my degree is, it'll be more enjoyable. It was less enjoyable because I was using all my creative energy at that job, and then I didn't really have much creative energy left outside of work.
Yeah.
And so when I quit that job, then it was okay, if I want to paint the things that I want to paint and not have to do commissions necessarily and use up my creative energy, because there's only so much, you know, your creative energy every single day is only a finite amount of time.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I don't want to use up my creative energy every day doing fulfilling everybody else's dreams and facilitating everybody else's goals. And so I was like, yo, what can I do to be able to paint the stuff that I want to paint? So I have a camera. I shoot my own references for my paintings. I can use that same camera to shoot people's weddings. I can shoot people's headshots. I can shoot, you know, any family photos, like all the things that you can do with a camera. That camera had video capability. And so people would always be like, hey, bro, like, why don't you shoot music videos? And I'm like, bro, I do not want to shoot music videos. But then it got to a point where I was like, well, I mean, I'm leaving a lot of money on the table because every single week somebody's asking me to shoot their music video.
Really?
And so I was like, well, you know what? Let's try that out. And so then I started shooting music videos, started shooting like more like ad stuff, shooting, like moving more into the commercial side of the filmmaking side of things so that I could fund me being able to paint the stuff that I wanted to paint, and I didn't have to necessarily paint people's dogs or their, you know, their grandparents and other stuff like that, which I'm not opposed to doing. Like I'm not opposed to doing, but I didn't want that to be the bulk of what I was doing every day. And so, like I said, like there was nothing that I felt was beneath me. And still to this day, I don't feel like there's, like, I still will do, you know, I don't have time to do all the things that I used to be able to do back then, but anything that would put food on the table, I was like, yeah, bet, let's do it. So yeah, that definitely moving in those realms was how we made it happen.
I was going to say, I first came across your name because I think you shot and directed a video for Magna Carta.
Yeah.
So I saw, and then your name was in the credits, I think, at the end. That's when I first learned your name. So and then I painted a portrait of Megs Kelly, and then I found y'all are cousins, right?
Yeah,
it's a small world.
Crazy, crazy. It's super nuts. Like that whole era of my life is like a blur because it was just I was shooting so many videos, and like everybody wanted these Hype Williams like Cole Bennett ass videos, but then nobody wanted to pay like the budget for those. So it's just like, y'all want all the, like, everybody's coming to me with these Nike ads and they're like, this is what we want. And like our budget is $200. I'm like, bro, what are we talking about? Yeah, so it was a trip because I was having to do so many videos just to, to make it make sense financially because I just wasn't charging enough because people weren't willing to pay what it costs to make a quality video. And one of my biggest goals was always like, yeah, this is a budget video, but I don't want it to look like a budget video. Like I want it to feel like, one, you don't know where it is. It could have taken place in any place. Because that was always I never wanted it to look like, oh, this is just a local Dallas artist. This is just a local Dallas video. Like I wanted it to feel like, bro, who did you fly in to get this made? And so that was always my goal. And it's still like, even with the fine art stuff, like I don't want it to feel like a local artist made it. Like I wanted to feel like on par with what's happening throughout the entirety of the art world. And so, like I said, I don't have as much time anymore to do like the filmmaking side of things and the photography side of things because the paintings have taken up quite a bit of my focus.
It takes a lot of time. I'm assuming.
Yeah.
And so you developed your style. So tell me about your style and the dots that people see in your work.
Yeah. So my goal with my work is to tell the story of what it means to be a black man in America and what that looks like, what that feels like. I grew up going to art shows and museums, and I never really felt like I saw us on the wall. And if it was us on the wall, it was always some like slave trauma stuff. It wasn't it wasn't ever anything like just existing.
Yeah.
And so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna make it my goal to make it like to tip the scales back the other direction and make the work that I wish that I saw growing up. And so I do a lot of different series that are important to me that, are things that I constantly am thinking about. But at the heart of it all is, making work from the perspective of what it means to be black in America. And the dots in my work are a representation of my mom. Once she passed away, a ladybug landed on me or near me the entire month or entire week we were planning her funeral. And I started seeing ladybugs as my mom revisiting me and comforting me and being like, yo, I'm still here, I got you. And so over time, I would like start hiding ladybugs in the works. And if it wasn't hidden in the work itself, it was like a ladybug was painstakingly painted on the, the first bit of the canvas before I gessoed it. Or, it could have just been anywhere. Like, I wanted people's experience with the ladybugs to be similar to my experiences with the ladybugs. I wanted it, you could find it on the side of the panel, the bottom, the back, because that's how I was finding them. It was just the most random. They would just show up in the most random spots. From there, it got to a point where I was like, my mom was my biggest and my first supporter. I don't want to keep hiding her in the work. Like, I want her to be a feature of the work. How can I paint a ladybug in every piece without necessarily painting a ladybug in every piece? And going to graphic design, going to graphic design school, they tell you, tell the same story with less words, tell the same story with less information. And so I was like, all right, if I distilled ladybugs down to their most basic forms, what would that be? And so it just became the dots. And then I was like, okay, well, now that I have dots, I have an identifiable style. I have something that people can look at immediately without my signature on the front of it and know, oh yeah, he made that. Because of how focused I was to become the most technically sound painter I could be. A lot of people kind of dismiss them sometimes because they're just like walking by them assuming, oh, that's a photograph or that's a whatever, like they just walk by it. But once I started incorporating the dots and becoming kind of less precious with the finished piece, because I add the dots after the paintings are finished, and I'm not afraid to like cover up something that like, yeah, I just painted this. Like this just got painted, but now I'm covering up the however much time it took me to paint that little section.
Little details.
I'm covering it up with something that's obscuring it. It made the pieces more visually interesting, but it also gave me the opportunity to play with the topography of a flat surface because with the filmmaking brain that I have, also being able to put something in the foreground, the middle ground, and the background activates the space a little bit more. In filmmaking, I have 24 frames a second to tell a story. But with painting, you often only have that one single frame. And so I have to like basically make people stop and look at the piece and spend a little bit more time with it. And so I love taking dots out of the pattern because as humans, we're really good at recognizing patterns. And so I can use the dots to kind of move the viewer's eye through the piece, how I want them to see it and pay attention to the things I want them to pay attention to. It's been a fun challenge and, something that I really enjoy about adding to the the surface of the pieces.
And who is that in this painting behind you?
So yeah, this is my friend Nicholas. He's an amazing guy. He used to be a administrator at a school, like principal, assistant principal at a school, and he's a very, very open about like his sexuality and who he is. Like he's very sure of who he is as a person. The series was called Defiant. It was based around the thought that, you know, in a world that's asking you to constantly shrink yourself, telling you how you speak is ghetto, how you wear your hair is unprofessional, you going out and being extra anyway in that world is an act of defiance. And so I reached out to the people in my life that were the most extra, the most authentic, the most themselves, and said, hey, I want you to come be your full authentic self here at my, the studio. I'll photograph you, I'll take some photos, and then we'll make some paintings from those photographs. And so I photographed him a couple of years ago, and with all of that series, I told people, wear what you want to wear, bring what you want to bring, and I'll make the photo from that. And he came in and he wanted to play with the masculinity and the femininity and like that duality. And so he wore a black sweatshirt, a black leather skirt, some fishnet stockings, and like some Air Force Ones. And so I was like, yeah, cool. And like a pearl necklace before people were wearing pearl necklaces. And so I was like, yeah, cool. So we did that photo or that painting, and then we went to Art Basel with that piece. And it got like a lot of attention, a lot of notoriety. And a lot of people in the comments of the Art Basel stuff, but also on Instagram and socials were mad about the piece because, you know, you're emasculating a man and blah, blah, blah. Like it was this whole thing. And Nicholas and I are both just petty enough that we were like, all right, next year, let's do a bigger skirt. And so we did, that's what this piece is since they were mad about a black man in a skirt, we were like, let's play up even more like the hyper masculinity as well as the femininity. So we were like, let's do a bigger skirt and a jersey, like dudes, sports, like it makes sense. And so this piece was born. And then we were like, every year from now on, we're going to do another version of this painting, but with a bigger skirt so that eventually he's only this big in the piece and then the skirt is like takes up the majority of it. But this piece was a lot of fun to make because of, it was at this point when I was doing the Defiant series that I wanted the people in the paintings, I wanted their energy to be big, but I wanted the paintings themselves to also be very big because, I've never gotten a museum exhibition. I don't have any museum acquisitions. And so I was like, yo, I'm going to make some pieces that are so undeniable that, if for no other reason, it, gives me comfort in knowing like, it's not me. Like it's the institutions. It's like, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Yeah. It's, the institutions and getting in there is a whole other thing. And so I wanted to make works that were huge and undeniable that one, like I said, just kind of married my love of like mural making as well as the fine art side of things by making them like huge. And so like working on that series and making the pieces like larger than life or life size was something that like once I started it, I was like, I don't want to go back. Like I only want to paint this big. But painting that big means you also have to sell pieces that are that big, and you have to find storage for pieces that are that big if they don't sell. So as much as I love it, I also have to be smart about like when and where I can make those.
Yeah, I still got some of the Punk Noir paintings on my wall at home.
Yeah, I feel that.
Final words, I think maybe advice for people that want to be able to do this. If you would have any advice for young Jeremy.
Yeah. The advice that I always try to give people, the biggest thing is everyone you've ever met is making it up as they go. Nobody has it figured out. Even the people that are the most quote unquote put together, even the people that, I've read so-and-so, I've done research to find out like all of those people are still making it up. Like every single person you've ever met is making it up as they go. And realizing that for me made things a lot less stressful. It made things like none of this actually matters. Like nobody cares. People are so in their own head and worried about their own stuff that you getting out here and being quote unquote cringe, they might notice for a couple of seconds, but then they're going to be back to their own lives and they're not going to notice. So trying and experimenting and just getting out there and making it happen. Like there's no rules to this. Like, because there's no rules, you can try it, and if it doesn't work, try something else. And because I can give you the exact roadmap to get to, this destination or whatever, but just because you follow the same path that I went doesn't mean that, there's not something in the way now, or
That's
something
true.
that wasn't there when I went through that path, that is there now. So yeah, realizing that there are no rules and you can do whatever you want is probably the advice that I would give everybody.
It's a good reminder. Thank you so much, Jeremy.
Thank you.
There's so much more to even talk about, but we'll
talk
talk
about
it for the interview. So.
Yeah, we'll get to it.
Thanks for watching, and if you like videos like this, be sure to like and subscribe, and be sure to follow me on Instagram and TikTok.